YouTube. This is YouTube. Hello, everybody on YouTube, and hello, everybody on Facebook. Michael Tillinger. Today is the 4th of December, 2024, and welcome to podcast number 5 in the One Small Town saga. Talking about One Small Town, discussing all the details, the benefits. For some reason, my arrangement with my laptop and my cell phone isn't playing ball today. I'm not sure. I don't know what I did last week, but it seemed to have worked better. So, or actually, let me move my cell phone to the other side. I'll move my cell phone here, and that might work a little bit better. All right, some organizational structure here. Yes. Okay. So let's get going. What are we going to discuss today? We're going to continue. Today, I'm going to discuss 4 very important topics. We're going to talk about how everything changes once we initiate an image. To some people, it's easy. It comes automatically. Some people get it instantly, and other people really struggle with it, and they just need a little bit of time. So I'll go through that, how everything changes and how it influences and affects our lives for the better, every single one of us involved. Secondly, we'll talk about the art gallery, which we launched yesterday in our test phase. Finally, after 2 years of coding and programming, it's been an absolutely epic journey. Keep in mind that we don't have to code it from scratch. We didn't buy an off-the-shelf package. We had to code and create everything ourselves so that we own everything and no one can ever hold us to ransom for anything we do in the One Small Town initiative. And that goes for everything. We'll touch upon that in other areas as well. And the important subject today that we're going to discuss, and that is the origins of money, how it is used, but the true thing about the origins and the true origins of money. And I know that is often a shock to many people when they realize how money was created in the world and how far back it goes. So we'll cover all of that. And then we'll talk about community projects versus businesses or projects in the communities that we start that are our businesses that we as a community choose to start ourselves, and the difference between community projects and the businesses that we start, and the critical part played and the role played by community projects, which is the feel-good stuff, the feel-good side of everything that we do. So that's what we're going to discuss. But before we get going on those 4 major topics today, just a reminder, once again, if you don't have a copy of the Ubuntu book yet, get yourself a copy of the Ubuntu book, the Ubuntu Contributionism book. This is the foundational document for the philosophy of One Small Town. It goes into all these details. Please go on to Amazon and find it on Amazon. That's the easiest and the best place for me to distribute this book. And also keep in mind that the funding that has come from this book has been one of the areas of funding the One Small Town initiative. So this is what is really for many, many years until we got some patrons that signed up a few years ago that started to help us with some funding. This was the major source of funding, together with a few other books that I've written and published. That was a major source of funding for the One Small Town initiative. Okay, so go and get this book. You'll enjoy the read. For whatever it's worth, you will enjoy the read and the different areas that it covers. I made it very easy to read. It's a short little chapters that really easy to read in one night or one sitting, and then you read another chapter tomorrow and every day. If you read one chapter every day, it'll keep you going, and it's not overwhelming. It's written in very simple and basic language. Now we're going to get onto some reminders of what we do with One Small Town and what we don't do, and some of the key things that drive us. And that is a reminder of our slogans. And one of our primary slogans that you will see, the logo that we've developed, and that is that if it's not good for everyone, it's no good at all. If it's not good for everyone, it's no good at all. And that is the fundamental message and ethos of the One Small Town Initiative. Everything we do for ourselves in our communities, everything we work on, all the things we do must serve every member of the community, because we can. And that's the thing. We choose to do it. And the more we work on it, the easier it becomes. So if it's not good for everyone, it's no good at all. And you realize, once you embrace that philosophy, if you use that philosophy as a point of departure in your way of thinking, in our way of thinking. When I say your, I mean ours, okay? So in our way of thinking, when we are working with One Small Town and we start to implement it and start doing things, if we find that something that we're doing is working contrary to a group of people or someone else, we find a solution. Because it's easy to find solutions when we're trying to do things for the greater good of the community. But unfortunately, in a capitalist model, that is pretty much the antithesis, the opposite of this. That's not how it works. And yet, what I find fascinating, is the extremely rich people. And again, I speak in broad terms here. Some of these are broad statements, okay? So take them at face value. Broad statements sometimes that represent some of our experiences. Once you start talking to very, very wealthy people, and I'm talking about the multi-millionaires and the billionaires in the world, once they get to that point and they have everything they need, and they literally can choose to do anything they want to do on a daily basis, they start to realize that while money can buy you success, it can buy you ease of life, it can buy you many, many things, but it can't buy you happiness. And a lot of these extremely wealthy people are starting to look for do that feed their soul, that make them happy, that will create a beautiful future for themselves and their children. So it's important to realize that while we are in some ways dealing with the evils of money and correcting that, and again, I say that we're not fighting money. We're not fighting money at any stage of this process. And I know that it's confusing to some people. And if I remember, I'll come back. Okay. All right, guys. This has been a quick fix on the roll. At least we're now live on. We continue with everybody that's held out here. Thank you for your patience on Facebook. This is you guys here. Great. And over here we have the new logged in Zoom. So now at least we're recording on Zoom and we can edit it together. So where was I? And now we've wasted quite a bit of time. So let me speed up this session. Okay, we spoke about the different things I'm going to talk about. And that is Everything Changes, Art Gallery, Origins of Money, community projects, and so forth. And then we got into the reminder of our slogans and what we're really doing. The fact that if it's not good for everyone, it's no good at all. And that really is a very important statement. And remember that we are not fighting money. We're not fighting the government. We're not fighting anybody. We're doing everything without any violence, opposition, or conflict. And that is fundamentally the critical thing here, because so many people think we have to go out there and fight. We have to fight the governments because they're oppressing us and they're doing this. And you can't do that. Just think about all the turbulence and the violence and the drama that comes from doing that. Again, our philosophy is that to change a system, you can't fight the system to change it. To change the system, you have to create an alternative system that makes the existing system obsolete. And that is fundamentally what we are doing with the One Small Town Initiative. We are thinking smart. We are working smart and working hard and working smart. Okay, we're not out there to create violence and chaos and opposition, because that's the field of politics. Politics creates opposition and opposition parties, and that's why there's always inner fighting. So in essence, if you think about this, somewhere along the line, somewhere along the line of our human evolution of consciousness, some very devious and smart people realize that politics will be a great tool to keep people enslaved, keep them fighting each other, thinking that they're finding solutions. through the current political system. And all it really does is it creates opposition, violence, conflict, and that's what happens. Yes, we find solutions. Yes, there are solutions, but they're compared to the problems that we face, the number of solutions we find within the political system are minuscule compared to the number of problems that we face, right? Um, it's a very interesting story from the many years of doing one small town workshops and how it works and how we work together and the frequently asked questions, the hundreds and thousands of frequently asked questions that I've had to face over the years. It's really been fascinating to learn from that, been our great teacher as well. So uh, when you do these one small town workshops and you ask people, give me your the questions that you think, the problems that we face that are insurmountable, that we'll never be able to solve. And when you weigh it up, after all the problems and the questions that people ask, you realize that it all boils down to what I've been calling the frequently asked questions. And I sort of, in a broad stroke, I broke it down to about maybe 20 or 24 frequently asked questions. And if you break those down, they come down to what I call the 13 frequently asked questions. And that's a fascinating situation. So in a room of 200 or sometimes less people, or even in a room of 3,000 people, the questions that people ask all come down to 13 problems that we face as humanity. 13 problems we have to solve to live in a beautiful utopian world. Just that's quite insane if you think about it, right? In the modern world, in the world we find ourselves in today, we have thousands and thousands, possibly millions of problems that our governments are seemingly working on and our governments are supposed to solve, and yet they never solve a fraction of those problems. And for everything they seem to solve, and our municipalities are this obviously as well, all the sort of hierarchical structures we find in the system, right? So for every problem they solve, they seem to create a few more problems. So we have thousands, if not millions, of problems in the world we face today. And yet, if you put on your one small town hat, we come up with 13 problems that we can think of. So all we have to do is, in essence, and this is a little bit of stand-up comedy here. It's a bit of irony, okay? All we have to do is solve 13 problems and we can live in a utopian world. Okay. I've loved that kind of concept because once you realize that it's got to be good for everyone, and if it's not good for everyone, it's not good at all, that we're using the tools of enslavement as tools of liberation, which includes money and the generation of profit, and how that profit is used to help and serve our community, to do the things we need to do, without which we can't achieve those successes. So it's really important that we understand the connectivity of all these things, the importance of understanding that this is something that's never been done before. And that's the next thing on my list. It's never been done before. And we're learning from every experience we have, every challenge we face. We keep learning and learning. And that's what makes us wiser and stronger and smarter. And that's how we can reach a stage where we can solve any problem that we face. And in essence, the moment you put your one small town hat on, you'll realize that you can solve any problem that we face in our community. So the people on Facebook, just give me a thumbs up if I'm still going live, and if everything is working on Facebook. Let me just make sure that it's working there, because on this side I'm just recording onto Zoom. So, and we will somehow solve this problem. Being out in the country, out in the mountains, this is not an easy problem to solve. I see we have Craig giving me all kinds of comments and feedback, but seems to be the only person that is commenting. So maybe someone else can give me a thumbs up other than Craig. Thank you very much for all your comments, Craig. And Steffi, thank you. Oh, Facebook, all good. All right, great. Let's continue. All right, so remember, it's never been done before. We're learning. And the reason we're doing this because we know that the system is broken, it cannot be fixed, and that's why we're creating an alternative system. Because even if we do everything we believe is necessary to fix this system, to fix this problem, we just keep putting on band-aids and bandages and onto an oozing and a weeping wound, and that's not healing the wound, because the fundamental structure of the current global system, the entire integrated system, from the central banking to the way that our governments are set up, the way that laws are made and passed, that are inhumane laws, that the people have very little input into the laws that are made. And the people really struggle once these laws are passed by our governments that are supposed to be our servants. Once our governments pass these laws and they put them into law and they start to rule and ruin our lives, it's very difficult in most instances to change those rules and those laws. And that's how dictatorships are created, and that's how absolute totalitarian control is created. And that's unfortunately what happens around the world in most countries. And once again, this is I find fascinating to see what's happening in the USA right now is an absolutely fascinating sequence of events. And I'm not going to go into politics because I want everyone to know that the One Small Town Initiative is open to everybody. This is outside of politics. It's an observation of what's going on in the USA. It's really interesting. And we'll see what happens, right? So let's talk about how the first point, and we have less than half an hour. So first main point for today, how once we start the One Small Town Initiative, how everything that we do, our lives and everything that we do changes, literally changes. How we live, where we live, why we do certain things and how we do certain things, the homes we live in, what materials they build of, the businesses we start and why we start the businesses, and who starts the businesses and who does the things in our communities and why do they actually do them, why we have certain things, the structure of our community, the decision-making structures, who is involved in it, how do we make those decisions for ourselves and the benefit of our community, who is in it, where do we do that, and when do we do that. Everything changes. Where we work, what jobs we have, how we drive, what cars we drive, what fuel we use, what source of electricity we use, how we change the supply of electricity, how we change communication, how we change technology, and who is responsible for that? Who's responsible for those changes? Everything changes. And imagine a situation where, because of the fact that we choose what we do in our community. Now, again, this is not for a country or this is in our community. We choose what we do. We choose what businesses we start. We choose how we start them and why we start them and how they're going to benefit our community and how we make them successful and who's involved in it and when we're going to start it and all those things. The who, why, when, where questions. Those are critical in those. Once we start thinking like that, everything we do will become environmentally friendly, reusable, recyclable, non-toxic, non-pollutant, will be healthy and help us live better lives. And again, that happens because we as a community choose to do that. So when we start to grow food, when we decide what food we are going to grow with all the farmers and the land that's available to us and the land that we negotiate with the landowners and the farmers, the kind of food that we start to grow, the way we process first of all, what seeds we use, the fact that we're using non-GMO organic seeds. And this technology exists, just so that you understand where I'm going with this. I will discuss our seed treatment technology, hopefully, possibly next week, since I've brought it up now. So we'll discuss that next week. Our seed treatment technology that is very, very unique and creates non-GMO super seeds that sort of, in a way, I guess, takes the seeds back to its primordial genetic structure that makes them grow faster and better and so forth. So I'm digressing again. But so once we decide what food to grow and how we create those organic non-GMO seeds for ourselves, and then how we protect those seeds so that no one can steal them from us and then lay claim to it and patent those seeds and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, very much while we're doing that, while we planning our food growing activities in one small town. So just the food growing activity, how that changes, who does it, how we do it, and where do we do it, where do we plant our food, how do we separate the food that we grow for commercial purposes to use in other foods and other food processing. And when I say processing, I mean the good kind of processing, preparing food, and not the terrible poison that we get on our grocery shelves these days. So everything changes. So just the food alone and the growing of the food is such a huge mind shift. What nutrients do we use? Where do we get those nutrients? How do we start those businesses, those companies, those agricultural companies to create those nutrients for our agriculture and our food growing? Where do we grow the food that we distribute to ourselves for our one small town stores and to our members? And where do we grow the food, and how do we grow that is aimed and earmarked for commercial purposes, whether it's exporting corn in bulk or exporting in crunchy corn or corn flour or whatever it is. These are fundamental things that are all part of how things change and how dramatically everything changes regarding agriculture from the way that it's done today. And it changes for the better. That's the key thing here, that whatever we do, it always changes for the better. And it does that because we as a community put the best people in, the best minds and the best experts when they're doing this, because we're doing it for ourselves with these experts that we bring in to do these things for us. So it always gets done to the best, highest level of quality, the highest level of competence, and making sure that we maximize the best outcomes from everything that we choose to do. So this is a very important part of it, how everything changes. And that's just the food growing. Now imagine the electricity supply, how once we are in a position where we can assert our communal and our group community strength, that we can say to the local municipality or the government, is that we have had enough of paying your tax, paying your electricity bills, and we don't want to buy your electricity because you're exploiting us, or use any existing bylaws or laws or municipal laws that now exist. More and more of these laws are becoming relevant, that we can actually say, thanks very much, we're no longer going to be buying electricity from you. We're going to install our own supply of electricity, whether it's in a river through turbines because we got fast flowing rivers, or whether it's through alternative energy or technology, or whether it's through alternative generators for which we have our own source, whether it's our own oil or our own whatever it is, whether it's gas, if we find a source of gas or whatever it is, whichever way we can generate electricity. Once we have worked it through and we have a plan of action, and if everything we do is always done with a plan, we don't just shoot from the hip and haphazardly just run out there and do stuff, because that's when you fail. You need to plan so that you succeed. Remember that famous statement, failure to plan is a plan to fail. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that every one small town that launches is a great success and a great example to every other small town that will follow, to learn from their experiences and learn from what they've launched and what they've started. So that's pretty much how everything changes. What cars we drive. Are we going to drive cars? How we get around? How do we get from one town to the other? Are we going to start looking at a different rail system that we fund ourselves between the small towns? And as more and more towns come up, we create new railway systems between the towns, and that's how we grow the railway network. I'm just throwing wild ideas at you because we have to start thinking like that. We have to start thinking completely out of the box because everything we choose to do is possible if we implement it properly and and create the proper foundation for it. So think think big, go wild. It doesn't mean we're going to do it tomorrow and charge out there and say we're going to start laying railway tracks because we're stupid and we're going to mess everything up. No, we're going to plan it and we're going to make sure that we abide by the necessary laws and regulations and all that. And if and where necessary, we then have some laws and regulations changed where possible so that it benefits our communities. And the more of this we achieve, the easier it will become. Because more and more people and more small towns are going to be doing this, and the number of people doing this is going to keep growing around the world, and it's going to make everything that we do easier and easier. So everything we do changes. Clothing, what kind of clothes we wear. Are we going to carry on wearing toxic clothes, polyester clothing? That is toxic to our bodies, that when you wear it creates static electricity that creates a bit of toxicity in our bodies. And compare the different kinds of clothing materials, linen and cotton and other fabrics that we use in clothing. Are we going to start growing the kind of materials that is best for our bodies and discard all the materials that are bad for our bodies? I hope you're starting to see what I mean by when I say everything changes. The moment we start to implement One Small Town, everything changes because we start to change the way we think. And the way we think and the way we approach challenges and opportunities and find solutions for the opportunities that we find and the challenges that face us. When we find solutions for them as a collective, as a group, using the smartest people in our community, everything changes because then we start to implement those plans and strategies that we have come up with. And that goes to healthcare. And I just want to let you know that our One Small Town healthcare and hospital, and the whole health industry strategy is so strong. I've been working on that for the last several months, and we've been working with the numbers. And the way that we have, you will start seeing me talking about it more and more. And I believe that we're going to find some very willing investors into the new healthcare systems, the hospitals, the health and wellness centers. We have learned so much from going down that road. And the approach that we have with One Small Town has turned out to be so amazing and so profitable. But it's taken us quite a long time to do the numbers because everything we do within the One Small Town healthcare system is there to benefit the people, not to benefit the shareholders and the owners of the private hospitals. So that changes everything, and it changes how that health care center or the hospital serves its community and how many of those people will need to use that hospital or healthcare center. So we've had to work around, literally change our way of thinking and the business model, and the way that you input the numbers into the business model is completely different from any other kind of business plan in the health sector. So it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would because I understood it, but the people, the business planners that are doing the business plans for us don't think like I do. I've had to train them to start thinking in the way that we approach problems and find solutions in the One Small Town model. And boy, let me tell you, even yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before? I got the latest 2 spreadsheets from our consultant that's working on our hospital and health center business plans and its profitability and its success. It is absolutely mind-blowing. It's staggering. And let me tell you that this model is applicable in every country. Unless there are some weird, crazy rules that I'm not aware of. I know that it's applicable in South Africa, in all our neighboring countries in Southern Africa. It's applicable probably in most African countries. It's applicable in the UK, in the USA, in Australia, in New Zealand. It's applicable in Brazil, in India. It'll be applicable everywhere that I'm aware of right now. So that is a very exciting thing for me to share with you. So once again, back to the to the heading of the subject is that once we start to implement one small town kind of thinking and implementation, everything changes. And our people in our towns, to end on this health note, we will have healthier, fitter, leaner, smarter people than we've ever had in the history of the world. Very, very quickly, within a short few years, I believe and I predict the moment we launch One Small Town, we will have smarter people, healthier people, more productive people, happier people, and in all aspects of life, because everything we do leads towards that kind of lifestyle and the services that we provide for ourselves. So I'm going to leave that there now. Now I'm going to talk about the art gallery. And I know that we're starting to run out of time. I'm going to run a bit longer today because of that connectivity problem. So I'm just a bit surprised that on Facebook we only have seven viewers, and I'm wondering if there's something wrong, that there's only 7 people watching us, because it hasn't fluctuated at all. It's just remained at 7 all the time. So it worries me a little bit. Nevertheless, I'll continue. I'll let that run because we are recording this as a backup on Zoom. So right, next one is the art gallery. The art gallery is now live. We have started to run the trial, the first trial. So this is an invitation to every artist anywhere in the world. If you want to sell your art and if you want to be visible to the entire world, please sign up as a member to the One Small Town initiative. Sign up as a member online. And this is the process that you have to follow. Okay. Go to our website, onesmalltown.org, join as a member. So that'll take you to, if you click become a member, that takes you to the One Small Town platform. Then you click on become a member again, because now you're on the platform. Remember, the platform is our private blockchain membership portal. And that is protected by a very strong firewall against any onslaughts against our website. So nothing happens on the website. The website is just the PR and the showcase of what we're doing. All the nitty-gritty stuff happens on our platform, right? So very highly protected activities from our tokens, our digital wallets, and everything, including our online store, which will be launching soon now that we've got the art gallery pretty much up and running. As soon as the art gallery is up and running, we'll be focusing on the One Small Town store, which will open more opportunities for our members around the world. And I'm talking about opportunities across a whole wide spectrum. So become a member. Once you are a member, then you log into your membership account with the email address and the password that you used. You log into your membership account and you'll see a bunch of options that you have as a member. You'll see my profile, my wallet, all these things. And then you'll also see, so you'll go, first of all, you need to go to my profile, and the top of that profile, when it opens up, at the top of it, it says apply for roles, right? So you go click on apply for roles, and then you'll see all the different roles that you can apply for. And those are the participation roles, from ambassador to project managers, business planners, and you'll see it says ambassador. You see it says artist. And so you apply for a role to be an artist, right? Important. So it's now you're applying to be an artist, to be able to upload your art. So you apply for that role. This is a manual role. Everything is done hands-on once you get to that point, because we don't want bots and AI and scammers to sign up and then try to undermine and infiltrate and destroy what we're doing here. So all of those areas are approved by living, breathing human beings, our curators that we've appointed. At the moment, we have one curator, Rihanna, who's doing a fantastic job, and Rihanna will be the curator that will approve, and also our platform support manager. Between Rihanna and our platform support manager, they will approve the artists that sign up to be One Small Town artists. Once you are approved as an artist, then just log out again. You should get a notification, but then you can log out again and log back in, and you'll see that there's a new, under the various options that you have as a member, you'll see upload my art. And you just click on upload my art, and then you'll see um, uh, you'll see that it takes you to fill in the forms, all the details of your art, who you are as an artist, what the art is called, the price of it, and the materials, the kind of art it is. Is it a fine art painting? Is it oil paint? Is it watercolors? What style is it? Is it a sculpture or a statue or woodwork or whatever? So all these things you fill in for each and every one of your works of art that you want to upload. You upload one work of art at a time. What happens then is the moment you've uploaded your art, it then goes back to the curator. And once again, a real living, breathing human being, a curator, will look at the artwork and make sure that it's not child porn or porn or some infiltration thing that people might want to give us some bad press with. So we will monitor it and approve the art, and then the moment it's approved, you then can go online and download your QR code. And that QR code is then attached. You print out that QR code and you attach each specific QR code that is attached to each specific work of art is then attached to your artwork. And there are certain instructions that we will share with you. We use a metallic plate to engrave the QR code on. The QR code will have the name of the work of art and the QR code. You then attach that to your work of art in the safest place where you as the creator, you as the artist, has decided that this is a safe place for me to attach this QR code with a very, very strong and irremovable glue. All right, we'll make some suggestions about glues. You might find out your own kind of glue. It must be a glue that doesn't stain, that doesn't perish. Once you glue it, it stays there forever. So if anybody tries to remove that QR code, it will damage the work of art. Right? So then they'll struggle to sell it and they'll struggle to get value for it in future. So we want to ensure that that QR code stays there forever, because that QR code then is the mechanism and the tool by which your work of art is turned into an NFT, right? I know that this word NFT frightens a lot of artists because some artists don't understand the world of NFTs and so forth. You don't have to worry about that. It's your work of art itself becomes an NFT, and it's literally the QR code that we attach that turns it into that. It also becomes the tool by which once your artwork is uploaded, every work of art is automatically generated a unique QR code. No one else can ever use that QR code for anything else. That QR code is forever and ever connected to your work of art, that specific work of art, and to the One Small Town Art Gallery. So if anybody is trying to use that QR code somewhere else, it'll automatically take them to your page on the One Small Town Art Gallery and display your work of art. Okay, very important. So we're now at a stage where we can work with artists, so they can we've allowed given artists the way to start to upload their work. So please go online, sign up as a member, go through this short process, and start to upload your work. If you have any problems, the email for support is very simple. It's a support platform at onesmalltown.org, but you'll see that email everywhere, a support platform at onesmalltown.org, and they'll get back to you and help you if you have any problems struggling to upload your art. Once we have a number of works of art and the first few artists that have signed up, and we have anything, between 20 or 50 works of art uploaded, we'll then schedule the first online auction. And that will be the first trial of making sure that the auction part of it works. Because what we will do once this is rolling and everything is working and functioning properly, every month we will have an online auction of all the best new works of art that have been submitted. So keep that in mind. So we will continue doing new auctions all the time. So new works of art will be seen every month. And that we then replicate it with every new One Small Town art gallery, every physical art gallery, once those become a reality in our small towns. So we now have a virtual art gallery. Any artist, anywhere, can sign up and start to upload their art. You'll be helped and guided. You'll get a QR code that's connected to each work of your each one of your works of art. That QR code needs to be printed out, engraved, not printed out, engraved into a little a plate, a sheet of metal. The information is shared with you once you've uploaded your art, and it's a small little square, probably like three centimeters or 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Or sorry, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, about 3 centimeters square. That'll be the QR code that'll forever be connected to your work of art. And that's what turns it into the NFT. And that's pretty much it. Once that is done, then the life journey of your work of art begins. And this is now, so we're in this testing phase. Obviously, like I said earlier, we've had to use our own coders. We didn't buy an online package to download and use an existing, auction package or online art gallery package. We coded and created our own because we need to be in full control of everything we do with One Small Town. We can't be held to ransom by third-party service providers. That never works, and it is already, when we've done this in the past, it has unfortunately come back and bitten us quite badly, and it's in some cases restricted some of our basic functionality in a way that has caused us a bit of damage from time to time. So we cannot allow or use any third-party service providers. We have to code and create everything from scratch with our coders and programmers. And that's why things are taking a lot longer, because as more funding becomes available, we can employ more coders and things will start to speed up. And so now we're going through this process. We're going to test this. So the first few artists that sign up are literally going to become the guys and the guys and gals that are going to be testing the system with us. And that's the most exciting thing. You're going to be a pioneering artist by being part of this exciting process. Once we've gone through this process, we've sorted out the live auctions. I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll have that ready by the middle of December, getting ready with our first auction. Who knows? It might happen sooner. It all depends how many artists sign up and how many works of art are uploaded. So the sooner we have a fair amount of work of art uploaded, the sooner we can hold our first real live auction. Once that is done, this is where everything changes. All the work of art, and this is the next coding that we're going to be finishing over the next 30 to 60 days. The moment the works of art have been either sold or unsold, once they've been sold and they now have not unsold, once they have a new owner, and a new owner is now in possession of the new work of art, it's been sold during the auction, that's when the ongoing royalty stream kicks in. Because the work of art remains for sale, remains on display, and remains for sale on the One Small Town Art Gallery forever. And the new owner can choose to say that they are open to offers, or they're not open to offers. But it's up to the new owner to either decline or accept new offers. So anyone at any time, at any stage, can go online and find a work of art, find something that they really like, and send the current owner, who may be visible or invisible, all depends on what the buyer of the art chooses. Once they've bought the work of art, they can either say, "Hi, my name is John Smith. I live in New York, and I'm now the owner of this art." You're obviously not going to know where they live and so forth, but they might tell you that they're John Smith and they live in the USA. Or they might tell you, the owner is unknown, but the owner lives in the USA. So you might know that the work of art now resides in the USA, or in Australia, or in India, or wherever, and but you don't know the owner's name. That's irrelevant and immaterial. The point is that anybody can at any stage go and make that new owner an offer on that work of art. That offer will be automatically sent via email and various other ways to the existing owner. And that owner then has a choice to either accept that offer or decline it. Now, if there's a work of art that people really love, and that work of art is available, and the display price, by the way, the display price that is indicated on the One Small Town Art Gallery is not the selling price. That's an indication eventually, once the new owner has taken ownership of it. So that will not display the selling price. It'll display an indicated price at which the new owner or the current owner is prepared to accept offers from. So you know where to start to pitch your offer. So if it says $1,000, you know that, okay, he or she is prepared to accept offers from $1,000. Let me sweeten the deal because you really like that piece of art, you want it. So you're gonna offer them $1,500 or $2,000 for that work of art. And the owner is going to either accept it or reject it. And that's it. The moment the owner accepts it, into that price, work of art is worked in the gallery commission and the 10% royalty for the artist. So every time this resale happens, the artist gets the 10% of that selling price. And that's what the owner and the buyer of the work agrees to when they buy the work of art, and agrees to continue to display it on the gallery, to continue first of all, the proof of authenticity, to get the certificate of authenticity, because by being displayed on the One Small Town Art Gallery and having the QR code attached to it, you then display the certificate. You get a certificate of authenticity with the QR code attached to it. And you then are you can prove that you're the rightful owner of this work of art. So any buyer of any art into the future will want a certificate of authenticity that's connected to this. So I suspect that this is going to change the way art dealers and art sellers will want to sell art, because we're creating what's referred to as a chain of title. A chain of title that proves and shows the authenticity of that work, and that there were a number of owners and how many owners there were and when the art was sold. So now we're going to create a whole a catalog of and a history of thousands and thousands and eventually millions of works of art as to when they were created, when they were first sold, and how many times they were sold, and how they increased in value. So this then also becomes an interesting place for people that invest in art investors, to follow the trends on the One Small Town Art Gallery and see the trends of certain artists, see the trends, how quickly the popularity of certain artists and their works, and start to invest into certain artists that they believe are still new artists, and they believe their popularity is going to go through the roof. And so it becomes another investment opportunity for art collectors and art dealers and art traders. And every time that work of art is resold, you as the artist, because it was launched on the One Small Town Art Gallery, you keep receiving 10% of the selling price every time your work of art is resold. So I trust you now understand how critical this is and how different this is from anything else that is out there. I believe we're changing the way that art is going to be sold and traded in the future. And the One Small Town Art Gallery is going to become a very exciting melting pot of beautiful works of art for the millions of artists that desperately deserve it. Okay, so where are we going now? Okay, we've done an hour, but that includes about 20 minutes of me messing around with connectivity. So now we're going to talk about the origins of money. All right. Actually, I'm going to leave the origins of money for last. I'm going to talk about the community upliftment projects as opposed to the businesses. I'd covered that already to some extent in this session today. But let me just go into that. Keep in mind, I've mentioned how important the businesses are, the short, medium, long-term businesses, from small ideas to big ideas. It's very important that to start off with, we look at starting small businesses that are easy to start, that are easy to get funding for, a few $1,000s or even $100,000. These are not big amounts of money. Those we can crowdfund ourselves in our community with our crowdfunding system that I mentioned in the previous podcast, with our specialized tokenization and crowdfunding system, that we can help fund our our small businesses. Um, so that's critical that we start these small businesses so we can get them going, get used to working the system, get used to working our 3 hours a week, get used to using our digital wallets, getting our Infinity tokens being deposited into our digital wallets, getting used to getting our food at the community kitchen or going to the One Small Town store when that comes online, to get our stuff every month and go get things that we need with our Infinity tokens, with our digital wallets, and so forth. So this is all part of the process as we grow and streamline and smooth out the usefulness and the use of this. So we iron out all the gremlins. Remember, no one said it was going to be easy. And we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing this because it's hard and it's never been done before. And if we don't do this, all of us are going to face a miserable future, living in a world where very few people are happy and no one is fulfilling their dreams and their passion and their God-given talents. That is why we're doing this, not because it's easy. And we're constantly solving challenges and problems every day of our lives as we work on the One Small Town initiative and as we engage with more and more members, more and more people, more and more ambassadors that want to join us, more and more funders, investors, project managers, business planners, and so forth. Every day, we solve many problems and we get bigger and stronger all the time. So the business plans and the businesses is one very important part of what we do, and we need to get, cash profit-rich businesses as soon as possible. On the other hand, the community upliftment programs and the community upliftment projects are even more important. In some ways, even more important, because those are the things that cost money that we generally can't do because we don't have the money. And individually, you can't really do it. We all complain about the state of the roads and the parks and the schools and, all the state of everything in our, sports facilities and so forth. It all depends where you live, I guess. And we complain about many things that don't work and the service that is not being delivered to us by our municipalities and councils. So that's where we step in as a community and start to fix those things ourselves. Now, the exciting thing about this is that some of those things are going to cost money as well. We might have to get tools and ingredients to do things, but some of those things we can actually do ourselves. Like, for example, there are many, many groups in small towns that are already active. There are so many amazing people doing amazing things voluntarily because they do it for the love of their town, for the love of humanity, because they're just humanitarian by nature. So there are so many amazing people that are already doing incredible things in our small towns. Now, what's important is that we start to connect with these people. There are people that pick up litter, people that fix the roads. There are groups of people that get together. I know several small towns in South Africa. There are people that do this. They get together and they plant flowers on the weekends. They go and plant flowers on the intersections of the traffic lights and in the parks and making the parks beautiful and planting flowers. So they beautify the town. So when people, and at the entrance of the town say, welcome to, Smithville, whatever your town is called, and they plant flowers and plants and make it beautiful. So when our visitors come to our town, they arrive and they feel special. They feel like they're being welcomed into our community. So there's those kind of groups. And there are people that help the elderly, people that grow food gardens, and they distribute the food to people and they give it away at the food markets, and they make other kinds of foods from it that they then give away to the elderly and the orphans and so forth. There are people that run food kitchens that provide soup kitchens and food for the homeless and the hungry and those that just don't have any money, that can't buy food. And these food kitchens don't have to be these horrible, dilapidated places. They can actually be beautiful, and they can be places that attract people, that attract tourists. I guess I might have touched upon that already. There are people that deal with the orphans and the elderly, and people that distribute clothing. People, distribute clothing. They either sew it or make it, or they buy it in bulk from somewhere, and they come and distribute it to people that just don't have clothes. and blankets in winter. That people that are just cold, they don't have proper housing and accommodation, and they have to sleep in tents and outside and in terrible conditions. At least we have people that distribute the clothing and sleeping bags and to keep people warm in winter. There are so many amazing groups of people doing incredible things. Now, none of this has to change. None of this has to stop. All we have to do is reach out to these groups of people and say, carry on doing what you're doing, but let's do it as part of the One Small Town initiative so that you now become part of a global group of people doing these kind of amazing things. But over and above that, now that you continue doing what you're doing, you're now a member of the One Small Town community. You're going to be able to interact with other groups that might help to do something else, maybe clean the riverside, pick up the rubbish, and all the litter in the rivers, and purify the water, and so forth. Make sure rehabilitate our rivers and dams with fish. Make sure that we've got enough bees to pollinate our plants, and so forth. So all these other groups of people that are attracted to those specific areas of community upliftment and community development, you're going to have more and more of these groups working together and being able to get together and share ideas and share a pint of beer that we brew in our own brewery, or share a glass of wine that we grow in our own, that we make in our own winery, right? You see where this is going. At the beautiful garden that we've created into our community kitchen, that our members go and have their plate of food after they've contributed their 3 hours. And that also then becomes an attraction to tourist buses, because we put up a stage there so that the dancers and artists and performers and musicians can go and perform there and get exposure to not only members of our community, but also tourists and tour buses that stop there to see how our members get together, how they come and enjoy a lovely plate of food at the end of their community contribution, and where our naturally talented artists and musicians perform. So, the community kitchen doesn't have to be this thing that we imagine, some hole in some horrible place where we put out some bunks and tables and we feed the people on paper plates and metal plates, and just generally how these bulk food kitchens are presented. We can make them beautiful. So what I'm saying is that the community upliftment programs are critical, because they give the people the sense of belonging, the sense of camaraderie, the sense of doing something together, unity, working together, collaboration, and reignite that feeling that we've lost, that we've had in the small towns, in our communities, that pioneering spirit that we do things together, we do it for ourselves and for the benefit of our entire community, not just me, 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 me. What's in it for me? What's in it for you? What's in it for every single individual is that we're turning our community into a place of abundance and prosperity in every area that we touch. And so these community upliftment groups already exist, are already active in so many towns and communities. We need to bring them into our One Small Town initiative, explain to them that they don't lose anything by joining One Small Town, but they're gaining everything. And I know that unfortunately, and this has been some of the experiences that we've learned, some of these community initiatives are run by charities and run by donations towards those charities, which keep those people that run those charities alive. That's their source of income. That's their means of income. And that does become a challenge. We need to solve that. And that's where you see where charities don't help anybody. It's just really charities, handouts are a terrible thing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We need to do away with charities as quickly as we possibly can. The longer we keep charities alive and just handing out things to people, the more we destroy society, the more we destroy the will of the people to do something for themselves. And we need to bypass that. We need to find solutions for those situations where charity organizations are providing services to our members without our members, or to the people, should I say, without the people having to do anything for it. The people just sit and say, well, where's my food? Where's my blanket? Where are my clothes? Where's my monthly stipend? Why aren't you giving it to me? Right? So as long as the charities are funded, you have the people captured. And if the people fear that they're not going to get their charity, they're going to continue doing what the charity asks them to do. They're going to continue being loyal to that charity because the charity is their source of survival. The moment you change that, the moment you say you'll continue getting your charity, you'll get your food, you'll get your clothing, you'll get so much more. You'll end up getting electricity, and you'll end up getting, you know, technology and furniture and anything you can imagine as we start to build it and grow it, and all kinds of food, not just a plate of food. You know, you can start choosing what food you want because you're now going to be a contributing member of the community. So you can get all these things, but you have to contribute something. So we're changing the mind and the idea of charity into contribution. You have to do something to be able to benefit from the prosperity that we create as a community. And that's how we create the success in our communities, because people want to do something. Nobody wants to sit on their backside. You know, even the people that beg at the traffic lights, or people that stand and begging or walk around begging, they're doing something. They're walking around begging. They're working. They're doing something. They're not just sitting on their backside somewhere waiting to die. They're doing something. And this is the kind of mindset that I try to instill in people, thinking about, you know, they say, yeah, but what about the really absolutely lazy people? Great, they'll remain lazy. And that's what's going to happen. The people that don't want to join One Small Town, because it's a voluntary process. So you join because you want to join. It's a voluntary process. No one is forced to join. And once you join, you contribute, you commit to doing one thing, and that's to contribute 3 hours a week. That's all you have to commit to find 3 hours a week to commit to your town and your community, towards uplifting the community or towards working in one of the businesses that we start. So the moment people start to commit to this, and the moment they realize that they can do something and learn something and actually be part of a group, it's a motivational thing. Everybody wants that. And those that don't want to participate will sit on the sidelines, sit on the fence, and fade away, and, you know, get weaker and sicker and whatever, you know, more depressed or whatever, while they see everybody else in their community get happy and healthy and vibrant, and the community spirit is growing and building. And as we progress and as we become more successful, that community spirit gets louder and bigger and more stronger and more vibrant, and we start doing more things and more activities and sports, arts, and cultural events everywhere. And those people sitting on the fence are just going to be there sitting and going, wow, all these horrible happy people everywhere, why are they so bloody happy? And sooner or later they'll decide to join us, and they'll also become happy. Right? That's what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen. Visualize that. See that in your mind. See that happening in your mind. Let's use the power of our mind and imagination to manifest all of this. So that's pretty much the community spirit, community upliftment. And now the final part of this this session today, and that is the whole mysterious story of the concept of money and the true origins of money. And this is where so many people really struggle, because what we are taught about money at school is so, well, it's not wrong. It's partially true. And again, this is the great example how disinformation and lies are propagated as the holy gospel or the truth, right? So you take a fraction of something that is true. You take a fraction of something, like you can say, well, I went to town yesterday. That's true. I went to town. I was in town. But what you did in town, it remains a mystery. So then there's, argument about, well, he went to town and he robbed a bank, or he went to town and he helped the orphans, or he went to town and he went to beg, or he went to town and got some water for his house, or whatever you went to town for. So you take, I hope you know where I'm going with this. So you take a little bit of the truth, and then, which is factual, and people can check it and they go, yeah, he went to town. But all the details about what you did in town are very, very fuzzy. And that's how they skew the truth. So they take the most obvious parts of money, where you can go and research how money was created through the goldsmiths and the credit systems that was created and the promissory notes that were created by the goldsmiths and so forth, and how the Knights Templar were actually originally the creators of modern banking and modern money systems and the modern banking systems. Many documents that you'll read and books that you read about the origins of money will show you that will tell you how Knights Templar were the first bankers and the original bankers, and that is absolute nonsense. That is not true. But so many people believe that. And then we read about the goldsmiths and how people would deposit their gold and their money with the goldsmiths, and they became the banks and they started to issue promissory notes. And then they got into trouble because they started to issue more promissory notes and the gold that they had in reserves. And you start seeing the problems that come up with the entire global money system. And then you discover that the entire global banking system, as we have it today, is controlled by a few very elite families, starting primarily with the most famous banking family, the Rothschild family, and obviously you've got the Morgans and the Rockefellers, and then the my goodness, the names escape me now, but there's so many of these banking families that have pretty much hijacked the entire global banking system, and they turned it into their private business. And people don't understand it when you say it's a private business, because that's what it is. But where they got the idea from is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, once you go further back in time, so the modern banking system as we have it works with the central banks. Every country has a central bank. That central bank is controlled by the Bank for International Settlements, which sits in Basel, Switzerland. And from Basel, Switzerland, they send instructions to every central bank in every country what that bank should be doing in that country. So in essence, all our financial and fiscal problems and plans that we have for each country comes from Basel, Switzerland, where they pretty much send instructions to the central banks of the world. These central banks, and I know I probably shouldn't have started here because I said I'd tell you about the origins of money, but this is where we are, and now we're going to find out where it all came from. These central banks pretty much operate outside of the legal system of every country. You can't sue the bank. You can't dismantle the bank. I know that in the USA it takes an act of Congress to dismantle the Federal Reserve Bank. I don't know what it takes in other countries to close the central bank. But ultimately, that decision should be up to the people. How can the people of a country be beholden and accountable and answerable to a private company that operates outside of the legal system, that cannot be sued, cannot be closed? How can we be accountable and answerable to a private company that we have no control over, that create our money and sell the money to us that we have to pay back with interest? So that's where the problem lies. Okay, and I'm going to stop talking about the current system and the problems. Let's talk about where it all comes from. And this is truly spectacular. So it goes way beyond the goldsmiths. It goes way beyond the Knights Templar, from around 1080 or somewhere around there. They started to do the pilgrimages to the Holy Land from France and that part of Europe, where the Knights Templar mysteriously emerged from, right? And then they started to do these pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and that's where the modern banking system, according to historians, was created, where they would take the people's money and they would keep it safe, and then upon arrival in the Holy Land, they would issue them the money because they kept it safe and held it safe, and they would issue it to them in some promissory note where they would redeem the money on arrival in the other destination point. So it was literally a promissory note. I'll give you so much, and when I get to the other side, you give it back to me from a different depository, right? Or they would carry the money and protect it because they had the swords and they had the army with them. So that's not where the money comes from. Way before that. So first origins of money goes back to the Sumerian days, where we suddenly see First of all, we read about it in the Sumerian Kings List, these Sumerian clay tablets that have become very famous over the last, I guess, 100 years or so, since we started to discover and translate the Sumerian, not discover, we discovered them before that, but since we started to translate and understand the Sumerian tablets and Akkadian tablets and that cuneiform text that's encoded into these clay tablets, right throughout the Middle East and the Near East and that entire part of the world, that millions of these clay tablets have been found. And what we discovered in those clay tablets is an entire history that tells us about, cooking and agriculture and medicine and healthcare and astronomy and astrology. And we find a lot of the knowledge we have today, in essence, comes to us from the Sumerian texts and the Sumerian clay tablets. But the key thing that is not discussed, and this is what should be taught in every academic school, in every financial school, in every high school, this history of the Sumerians and the origins of this modern day civilization. There's evidence that there are older civilizations in other parts of the world, not just the Sumerians. Okay, so this is again a broad stroke brush statement. But a broad brush statement. So what they discovered are these Sumerian kings lists. Again, it's a cuneiform tablet in different shapes. And these kings lists are known as kings lists because they give you a genealogy of the different kings that ruled throughout Sumeria and the land of Sumer for thousands of years. And they name these kings and they tell you when they ruled, how long they ruled, their names and genealogy and what land, what part of the Sumerian land they ruled. And one of those clay tablets is fascinating because, so what these clay tablets tell us, first of all, they tell us about the days when the kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven. And the priest kings were appointed by the gods. Now, this is the first time we ever hear about kingdoms and kingship in the history of the world from these Sumerian clay tablets. So this is what we can call the true origins of the royal bloodlines and where the kingdoms and kings originally come from, or the ideas of kingdoms and kings and queens. In the beginning, it was all kings. There was no queens in those days that come to mind for a long, long period of time. Much later, there were some high priestesses and so forth. But the first priest kings were appointed by the gods, and that's when it said this king's list tells us, and kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, and the first priest kings were appointed by the gods to rule over humanity. Now, these first priest kings that were the first royal bloodline had some very interesting characteristics. And again, in the Sumerian text, where they refer to them, their longevity, how long they lived, some of them lived for 12,000 years, 20,000 years, 30,000 years. They ruled for 12,000 years and they ruled for 20,000 years, right? So they lived much longer than just ruling. So for all intents and purposes, these first priest kings may have been immortal. Who they were and why they were immortal is a completely separate discussion. That's not what we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about here what these first priest kings did. And then they tell us that what these first priest kings did is they started to rule over humanity. And they suddenly owned all the land. All the land belonged to these first priest kings. And people everywhere had to work for these kings. And if they didn't work, they would be smited. And to be smited, these priest kings had some weapons of mass destruction, some fierce weapons with which they could smite people en masse. And where there are some hints to what kind of technology or weapons this may have been in the Bible and in other ancient texts and Sumerian texts. And we're dealing with some very advanced technology here. So these are not ordinary human beings, ordinary humanoids. This could be a whole different part of our human history and potentially pre-human history. So these priest kings now suddenly ruled the world. They were scattered all over the world. It wasn't just in the Middle East. They were scattered to the Americas, to all over the world, where they ruled and took control of the people that lived there. They started to mine gold. They were very, very proficient in mining gold. They built temples. They built their huge, impenetrable temples from where they ruled. And in those temples, they started to make the rules and the laws. And from what I write here, so they ruled from those temples, and all the laws and the rules, and dispensed justice. And the next thing they did is they started to create little clay tablets as the first forms of money. So these first temples in which these powerful kings that smited people if they didn't listen to them lived, nobody could attack them because the people just didn't have enough, weaponry or tools or whatever. And these priest kings obviously had these fierce weapons, and the people feared it. So I've often joked about this. I said, I've been joking about this and saying, how did the first kingdoms ever arise? Where did the first kings and the royal bloodlines, that's what we're talking about, the royal bloodlines, the royalty that still today claim they own the land everywhere. Think about it. They claim they own the land, and we're just using the land. We're just, people that have been given title deeds. You're not the actual owner. You just have a deed to a title of the piece of land, but it's not actually owned by you. It still belongs to the royalty, real estate, royal estate. That's where the name comes from, real estate, royal estate. So, so now they owned all the land. People feared them. Oh, I was joking. A story that I was telling. Sorry, I'm interrupted by people interrupting me on my phone. They owned all the land, and they let me gather my thoughts here. And they started to issue money from their temples. First of all, they made new rules. If you didn't follow the rules, you were smited. And every year, people had to bring in food. They had to bring in and deposit food at these temples and feed the kings. People had to grow food for the kings. And these kings had special requirements. They had a whole menu that they wrote out as to what kind of food they prefer, what kind of food they don't like. That you make sure that you put salt on my food when you bring me offerings and so forth. And these are fantastic stories in the Sumerian text that are very parallel to some of the stories in the Bible. And this is fascinating and a whole very important discussion. However, the first thing that they did then is they started to ask people, because remember, these first kings were mining gold all over the world. They were mining gold. All these ancient civilizations were very rich in gold. And keep in mind that when the explorers from Europe in the 1400s started to find the Americas and Africas and India and South Americas, they would find these ancient, these people that lived there, these ancient people that lived there, that had huge amounts of gold and vaults of gold. And every time they met those people and they were asked who does the gold belong to, they were told the gold belongs to the gods. Now, again, that's another subject for discussion. I'm digressing a bit, but all this information that I'm sharing with you is literally what led to the creation of the One Small Town Initiative. Understanding where money comes from and how it was manipulated into the complete and utter global control mechanism that we find ourselves in today through the money system and the banking system. And this is how far this manipulation goes. So then these priest kings started to ask the people to bring in their gold and their silver to the temple. They were accumulating gold. And in return, they would give the people a little piece of clay on which was printed in cuneiform style that John Smith, because that's what they were called in Sumerian times, right? John Smith, that's a joke. So when John Smith bought, 5 pieces or 8 pieces of silver or 10 pieces of gold into the temple, and this clay tablet is the proof that he deposited so many pieces of gold or silver into the temple. So what have they done? What did those first priest kings just do? Or their scribes? Remember, they had scribes. The kings didn't do it themselves. They had scribes that were doing this. They were, court, guys that ran the courts. And so they would create these Sumerian clay tablets as the first forms of money, first forms of promissory notes, because that's what money is. It's a promissory note. I promise to pay the bearer on presentation of this note. So now the people had these pieces of clay that said that they deposited some gold and silver in the temple, and that became a means of exchange. Because if you're the holder of that piece of clay, you're the holder of the note. And that's what happens today. If you give somebody $100 bill, you're the holder of the note while you're holding it. But when you give it to somebody else, they become the holder of the note, and they have the right to then go and use that note and buy something with it. So the moment you became the holder of that clay tablet, you became the holder of the value, what's imprinted in cuneiform text on that tablet. Can you see that? That is exactly the same system that we use in the modern day banking system today. And this goes back some 4000 BC. So 6,000 years ago, around there. It's difficult to say. Okay, we can't tell with exact accuracy. It could be 8,000 BC. It could be 3,000. Who knows? But we know that more or less around 4,000 BC, we start seeing the first appearance of this money and of these cuneiform clay tablets. That's how far they've been dated, to around that period, so 6,000 years old. And that's, my friends, is where the true origins of money comes from. The first bills of exchange in the forms of cuneiform clay tablets, bills of exchange, promissory notes, and then what recently became known as negotiable instruments. And that is what the modern day Rothschild banking families have adopted, and they've perfected it into the modern day banking system that we use today. And they just made it their own baby, and they control all the central banks. And this is what we have to deal with. And this is what One Small Town is all about. Once we understand this, we know that we can't fight the system. The system runs the world. You can try and fight it, but you will lose. And ask me, I'm one of those people that try to fight the banks in the courts, in the High Court, including the Constitutional Court in South Africa. And I did not win. I won eventually with a promissory note that I submitted, which was accepted, but that was just accepted because I caused so much dust. I created so much publicity in the media over a 4-year period. They just wanted it to go away. They didn't want any more media news articles about it. So they just accepted my promissory notes because they just wanted to kill that story. But by doing that, in essence, they created a legal precedent, because by accepting my promissory notes, they now need to accept everybody else's promissory notes. And that's a whole nother subject. So I hope you understand that the creation of money and the origins of money is a very, very important part and an integral part of where we are today as humanity, how we've been lied to, that money is not what we've been told, that money did not evolve alongside humanity because we somehow created it through need, that money is necessary for humanity to survive, that that money is the mother of all inventions and all that kind of nonsense. No, people invent things, people create things. Money does nothing. People do everything. But money is the motivator that is used in modern society to get people off their backsides to do something. Well, we're changing that with the One Small Town initiative. We're motivating people, yes, with money and with success and profits, but with something much, much more, something that money could never, ever buy or never, ever give you, with feeling of fulfillment, feeling of value for life, feeling that you're living a life that you're worthy something, feeling of gratitude and respect, that you're respected and valued, a valued member of your community, because what you contribute to your community helps to bring prosperity and abundance to your community. So that's what we're doing. And in the process, we create a huge amount of abundance in money. And that money abundance will keep growing and growing and growing in our small towns until we get a stage where we won't know what to do with the money. And maybe that's a good point to depart here. And it's a good problem to have. And I believe this is what we're working on. And we're getting there. Like I said, no one said it's going to be easy. And we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing this because we want to do it and because it's never been done before. And because if we don't do it, the world we're going to face in the future and the world our children are going to face is going to be a miserable world of totalitarian oppression and control disguised as freedom. And we know what that looks like. The moment they try and tell you that you should do this because it's going to make you more free, and totalitarian dictatorships have become very, very shrewd in disguising their intentions and how they oppress and control humanity. So, yeah, good to have you here today. I'm sorry about the technical problems we had. Hopefully next week that won't happen, and I will catch you next Wednesday. As always, another podcast. This was fun talking about all this stuff. As you can see, I love it. I get excited. It enthuses me and it energizes me. And because I know how well we are doing and how close we are to a success. 2025 is going to be an absolute roller coaster ride with huge success stories, starting with the Once More Town Art Gallery, and then with the launch of our new technology that we're about to launch, that will become the funding mechanism for the Once More Town initiatives in every country around the world. So we no longer have to depend on outside funding and donations and so forth. But for the next 3 to 6 months, I'd say, just to be on the safe side, for the next 6 months, please continue your support. Sign up to become a patron and support our office. This is where we need the funding and the donations most, in that last stretch, that last 100-meter sprint of the marathon that we ran over nearly 20 years. All right, until next Wednesday, Mike Tellinger. Bye for now.